The next speaker is Mr. Stoyanidis, professor at the Faculty of Theology of the Aristotle University of Thessaloniki. Christ is risen. Good evening. Thank you very much to the Interparliamentary Assembly on Orthodoxy for the invitation. It is a great honor and pleasure for me to be attending this conference. Starting from the title of this roundtable, I'd like to share some thoughts with you, stemming from the rather small experience of mine, 10 years, as a teacher at the Department of Theology of the Aristotle University of Thessaloniki. And not just in the department, but also in the faculty. What do I mean exactly? In the department, in our faculty, we regularly organize scientific events through which we try to explore the importance and the role of religious education in public schools. 3 days ago, on Monday, the two workshops of pedagogy of the two departments of our faculty, and the directors are attending this panel, Professor Metropolis and Professor Pepes. So we jointly organized a roundtable on religious education. Religion as a subject, is it a private affair? Or is it a matter of education in public space? Professor Friedrich Schweitzer, who is honoring us with his presence today at this conference, was a guest speaker. And he shared with us very interesting ideas about how religious education is a matter as closely linked to the future, not of the churches, the future of Europe. My personal view on the topic of this roundtable can be summarized in an argument that links three key parameters. First, the educational process, the pedagogy offered in school, and the purpose it serves. Number two, the notion of public space and the notion of polis, the city, with clear references to Aristotle. Considering polis as the element through which democracy functions and human coexistence. Number three, the meaning and the role of religious education. Why should we have religious education, or why shouldn't we? The Faculty of Theology has developed a forum of debate around these three parameters, and its title is Education, Polis, Faith, in cooperation with the Faculty of Theology of the Zurich University. And I will later explain what we mean by faith. As far as the first parameter is concerned, based on a theory on pedagogy developed by I.A.O, school, or in any case, what we could call schooling, school pedagogy, and this is an international term, has to offer three things: qualifications, socialization, i.e. familiarization with a set of values, and number three, subjectification, a term we're not so familiar with, and it's hard to translate in Greek. I.A.Th says this as a peculiar term himself. This can be briefly explained as becoming a mature subject. The term subject is borrowed by I.A.O. from a great political philosopher of the last century, Hannah Arendt, who made a PhD on Heidegger, starting from Augustine. Subjectification, becoming a mature subject, entails, in plain words, I'll try to explain the rationale of the Dutch pedagogist, enabling people to become mature citizens and enter the public space. So school is a preparatory stage. And this is related to the Greek term scholi. When we are apascholimeni, i.e. occupied, we have no scholi. Scholi is taking a step back from a daily routine in order to reflect on the meaning of things and the meaning of your life. And this is what school is about, and what schools were about in ancient Greece. So it's a preparatory stage for entering public space. And if public space is a field of encounter with the other, not ourselves, the other, who are different, then the school is the matrix that can make this encounter in public space successful. So school is not just about gaining knowledge. You can gain knowledge anywhere. It's not about acquiring more knowledge. In the era of AI, artificial intelligence, it's very easy to get access to knowledge, but you need school in order to learn how to think, how to understand, and more importantly, how to live, how to lead your life. But why should entering public space be so important? Why do we need schooling? The answer was given many years ago by Aristotle, and then it was paraphrased by Megas Vasilios in religious terms. Man is by nature a political being. Megas Vasilios, as the professor from Cyprus, a teacher of mine, mentioned, I'm referring to Mr. Economou, man, according to Vasilios, is a social animal. What do these two people mean? The saint of our church and the great philosopher. What does political man mean, and what does social man mean? A political man is the person who wants to be in power. Is it the person that is involved in a type of political activity or authority? No. A political man is a man that builds the city, the polis. What is the polis? Many centuries later, a French philosopher, Claude Refort, drew a fundamental distinction that was familiar in ancient Greek thinking, not in modern thinking. In French, his distinction was le politique, la politique. Politics, as used in daily life, refers to governance and political power. Le politique, masculine in French, Neuter in German, das Politische. In English, the political. In Greek, to politikon. So what is political? Political scientists, political thinkers have written thousands of pages on that. Simply put, political refers to the foundation that determines and builds contemporary polis, i.e. human coexistence. So if polis is what is shaped and can be visible as a way of coexistence, the political is the lies underground the city, what cannot be seen but functions as a foundation, or better put, justifies the human need, a man's need to move outside his self and meet the other being different. I'm already talking in theological terms, although all of this is part of political science, simplified, of course, for the purposes of this round table. So meeting otherness builds the polis, and through this encounter, man finds himself or herself, the meaning of their life and bliss. This encounter cannot be carried out individually, nor does it benefit the individual. The encounter is the founding act of the polis. The encounter with otherness creates culture, civilization. It builds coexistence and it builds the polis. It is the womb of polis, just as school is the womb of encounter. But this gives rise to the following major question. Why moving out of oneself? Why granting freedom to the other so that he or she can express their creativity, create something together with me? Why should my own personal benefit go hand in hand with the good of society? Why should I be a political being? If this why is not answered, human coexistence is put at risk. Human polis is put at risk. If there's no reason, why should we want coexistence? In the case of Europe, the European Union, this why seems to stem from Christianity, more specifically the ethos that stems from Christian life. So what's the role of religious education after all? And this will be the end of my presentation. It has to do with cultivating religious consciousness. Why should there be catechism that is offered by the Church? The Church's reason for being is the unity of everything with Trinity. And this unity is expressed through freedom and love. There can be no freedom without love, and vice versa. This is the supreme value, and values are not colorless or odorless. They're not cosmologically neutral. They are forged with love and are closely linked to life. Two of the key notions, and I'm speaking now under my hat of an Orthodox theologian, have a political hue. I'm talking about church and liturgy. Please, we have run out of time, and we still have one more speaker. I'm reading my last paragraph. I think that this way of life should be the subject matter of a religious class that will have a political character. Function as an example for reflection and imitation. Students will be helped to understand what it means to be living in a polis, what it means to meet others and co-create. And this is the answer to the question, why is man a political being? Such a political nature of religious education is not needed by the Church, basically. It is needed by the state. It is needed by democracy. And by extension, Europe. founded on Christian values. Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Stoyanidis. He presented 3 parameters: the pedagogical process at school, not only knowledge, public space and the polis, and the role of religious education in Europe today. The last speaker of this panel is Mr. Evangelos Pepes, professor at the Faculty of Philology of the Aristotle University of Thessaloniki. Thank you very much. Thank you for this invitation. It's an honor. I would like to commend you on this initiative. All of us have first-hand experience of this successful meeting, and our experience confirms the positive course of this conference. Very briefly, in bullet points, as a follow-up to what has been heard already on this panel, following the framework set by Mr. Zorbas in the beginning. Two main parts in my presentation. The first one, following the guidelines, we shall try to highlight the significance of those legislating on education, and in particular religious education, how important it is for them to be aware of the context and be capable of expressing these conditions in legal terms. And in the second part, some main principles about religious education put forth in public debate, which are either misunderstood or partly understood and lead to problems in the public debate and legislative initiatives. This roundtable opted to use education in order to highlight the importance of Christian values in European legislation. This was a great choice because education has a formative character, and this makes it a safe indicator with regard to the performance of educational policies and their success in reaching their objectives. Speaking about religious education, irrespective of its form, which is the fundamental conduit for transferring Christian values in the educational system. And if we consider that the operations of the public educational system is organized by public and state institutions, the legislative work of parliamentary representatives is very important in public perception of church values, of Christian values. Helps us realize the interactions between education, politics, and society. Now, with regard to religious education and legislative work. Religious education is inextricably linked with the constitutions of individual states. We heard a lot about the great constitution from the minister. The national constitutions deal with religious traditions in different forms. Many constitutions are either neutral or negative to the religious phenomenon, adopting the well-known principle of a secular state. The secular state may appear in two forms: a soft one, neutrality, and the extreme one, atheism. The first model prevails nowadays, institutionalized separation of state and church, and a private and a public sphere. The secular state has been linked either with the marginalization of religion, and France is a case in point here, or with the recognition of religion as a part of the identity of a state, Greece. This has been the outcome of specific historical and cultural developments. I'm not going to go into detail. In France, the secular state adopted the anti-clericalist ideas of Enlightenment and the French Revolution. In Greece, people's power was vested with a religious character under the influence of the struggle for independence that forced Greeks to identify themselves in connection with their religious identity. This is proven by the reference to Trinity in the Constitution. What does this entail for religious education? Starting from the secular state, we have a secular school, either neutral or atheist. The form and the content of religious education is part of the first model. In the second model, there is absence of any reference to religion, no teaching of any religion, and non-existence of symbols, both by the state and the students in the school setting. This has failed in Europe. I'm finishing, Ms. Metropolis. But I'd just like to share with this panel some excellent examples from Mr. Feidas' presentation. You heard about that from Mr. Stoyanidis 2 days ago in the Faculty of Theology. And these have to do with the distinction between private and public and the value of Christian values overall for European public life. With regard to the distinction between private and public, there's a contradiction in that, and this is very useful. Where does the contradiction lie? If the state, or rather, as long as the state deals with public space, it's dealing with religion, even if it were to delimit it within the private sphere, creates a contradiction. The most competent body for public space discusses something that belongs to the private space in order to position it in the public space. Number two, equally important, even if we accept this distinction between public and private sphere as a result of the principles of a secular state, we cannot argue that religion belongs exclusively to the public sphere. The protection of religious freedom, and this is the key argument, undoubtedly leads to the protection of the individual from being forced to join a religious community or discrimination on the part of the state on the grounds of religion. At the same time, the right to religious freedom includes the protection of free religious expression and practice of every citizen, of every person. So protection of religious freedom means protection of faith, both as a private affair and as an organic part of the citizens' practice in public space and in collective settings. So are Christian values significant or not for what we call collective public life? The same speaker also pointed out that if democracy is a good which is fundamental for Europe and for the world, Democracy is very sensitive, and it is based on a number of values, beliefs, and attitudes that require fostering a favorable culture. And this is where religious education comes in fostering this culture that creates the conditions for consolidating and further maturing our democracies. The contribution of religious education was questioned in France in 1882, recognizing the value for the formative value for students, but isolates it from its roots. So religious education has a position in public schools since it's part of the public sphere. Encouraging peaceful coexistence and fostering that and cultivating that attitude among students and later on among citizens can be achieved through religious education, which can not only be part of one subject taught at school. Religious development, religious cultivation should be mainstreamed. It should be a general purpose of education, not just religious education. Number 3, social cultural diversity does not permit the horizontal application of one single model of religious education. And lastly, the model of religious education that will be designed and applied should serve the religious development of students, which should include familiarizing students with the elements of their own religious tradition, the tradition they belong to. If this is not the case, there can be no objective treatment between their own tradition and other traditions. Thank you very much.
We too thank Professor Pepes, who in a sense provided the conclusions. Mr. Stylianidis concluded that we need education. I would add that we need religious education. Not reforms, but replanning and rescheduling this religious education, because we're talking about 4 or 5 years according to the boldness of each Minister of Education. But what sort of society do we want, and how will this society be formed within the social being, which quite rightly the importance of the city, so that we can continue building Europe. Were questions, but at 8:25 I will. He holds the keys. He wants to lock up. Mr. Economou or Mr. Harakopoulos? Mr. Harakopoulos. You have the floor. I would like to congratulate speakers, because this is a very important and crucial matter, the question of education. We listened to 2 ministers of education who had a positive view as to religious education within schools. I will simply would like to state my experience in 15 years when I teach religion in private schools. The fact that the University of Nicosia gave us the possibility of having a postgraduate and doctoral program, which I set up and I'm responsible for the way it functions. 80 postgraduate students, and every year, in 15 years, we're talking of a large number of graduates. And I would like to, I didn't discuss an undergraduate program because I wanted to have the relationship between Cyprus and students together with the theological faculties at Athens and Thessalonica for practical reasons, exchange of students and so on. But what I wanted to stress, and what was impossible to have in a public university, is that students who enroll in my department are 70% non-theologians. In other words, they're graduates in many different fields, chemistry, education, philosophy. We have bishops and metropolitans and who my question is clear. I want to say, in other words, that there is no conflict, there is no difference between public and private education when the principles are right and they diffuse religious education. My position is clear. Thank you.